Move aside, you worthless piece of trash. David Harper's hand shot across the table. The slap echoed through the diner like a gunshot. 73-year-old Grace Mitchell's coffee cup went flying, shattering on the floor into 1,000 pieces. Her reading glasses slid off her nose. Every customer in the diner froze. Phones came out instantly, recording everything. Grace touched her burning cheek slowly, but she didn't cry. Her calm eyes met Harper's furious glare without a trace of fear. Something about her quiet strength made him uncomfortable, but he didn't know why. David Harper straightened his designer tie, feeling satisfied. Another nobody put in their place, another person who needed to learn where they belonged. But here's what Harper didn't know. Grace Mitchell wasn't just some random elderly woman. The way other customers looked at her, with respect, almost reverence, should have been his first clue. Because Grace had a son. And when Anthony Mitchell learned what happened to his mother today, David Harper's comfortable world would start crumbling in ways he never imagined possible. Have you ever seen someone's arrogance destroy their entire life in 48 hours? Because what happens next will leave you speechless. Let me take you back to this morning to show you how we got here. Grace Mitchell's morning routine hadn't changed in 40 years. 5:30 a.m. sharp. She'd wake up in her small but immaculately kept apartment. Sunlight would filter through the lace curtains she'd made by hand decades ago. The apartment told a story if you knew how to read it. Family photos arranged perfectly on the fireplace mantel. Fresh flowers from her tiny balcony garden. Bookshelves lined with everything from philosophy to poetry. But the photos told the real story. There was Grace in her cap and gown, holding her master's degree in social work with pride. Grace and her late husband, Robert, dancing at their 40th anniversary party, and most prominently displayed, recent photos of her son, Anthony. Anthony at charity dinners wearing $1,000 suits. Anthony is shaking hands with the mayor. Anthony commands respect from everyone in the room. Her neighbors knew Anthony was successful. Very successful. Something in business, Grace would say with that mysterious mother's smile. Import-export helps people solve their problems. She never went into details, and nobody pushed her to. At exactly 7:30 a.m., her phone rang like clockwork. "Morning, Mama. Did you sleep well?" Anthony's voice carried warmth reserved only for family. Despite running half the city's underground operations, he still called his mother every single morning without fail. Grace settled into her favorite armchair. "Like a baby, sweetheart. How's work treating you?" "Can't complain. Business is business." A pause. "You got plans today?" "Lunch with Evelyn at Sal's Diner, our usual Tuesday tradition." Grace could hear the concern in his silence. Anthony always worried about her going out alone, though she never understood why. The neighborhood was perfectly safe. She'd lived here for 45 years. "Mama, you know I could arrange something nicer. Private rooms, better service, places more appropriate for someone of your standing." Grace chuckled softly. "Anthony Mitchell, I raised you better than that. Good people matter more than fancy places. Sal's has the best people and the best pancakes in this city." "Yes, ma'am." Anthony's voice softened. "Just be careful out there, okay? Not everyone is who they seem." "I'll be fine, baby. You worry too much about your old mother." "It's my job to worry. Love you, Mama." The call ended abruptly. Anthony never stayed on the phone long, even with family. Important men had schedules to keep, decisions to make, and empires to run. Meanwhile, across the city, another man was starting his day in a very different mood. David Harper's penthouse office took up the entire 45th floor of downtown's most expensive building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the entire financial district. Italian marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers. Leather furniture that costs more than most people's annual salary. Harper stood at those windows like a king surveying his kingdom. His reflection stared back, Perfectly styled hair, custom-tailored suit, gold Rolex catching the morning light. Every detail is calculated to project one thing: superiority. His assistant, Rebecca, approached nervously. She'd learned to read Harper's moods, and they could turn violent without warning. "Sir, your 9:30 meeting materials are ready. Also, Mrs. Chen called requesting to reschedule her consultation." Harper's face darkened immediately. "Mrs. Chen? That woman who can barely speak English? Tell her to learn proper communication before wasting my time." "Sir, she actually speaks 6 languages fluently and runs a billion-dollar tech startup." "I don't care," Harper snapped. "Image is everything in this business, Rebecca. My reputation depends on having the right kind of clients, the kind who belong in offices like this." This was Harper's universe. Success is measured by how many people he could dismiss as inferior. Power is defined by never considering anyone else's humanity. He'd built his career as a corporate consultant, helping wealthy companies avoid accountability for discrimination. His specialty? Making problems disappear, usually by destroying the people who dared complain. His phone showed news notifications. Police brutality videos are trending. Investigative reports on workplace racism. Congressional hearings about hate crimes. Harper scrolled past every single story with practiced indifference. These weren't his problems. These were problems for other people, people whose existence he considered completely irrelevant. But Harper's perfect morning was about to go sideways, and it would all start with something as simple as being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sal's Diner buzzed with its usual Tuesday lunch crowd. The place had been a neighborhood institution for 30 years. Construction workers grabbed quick meals, office workers escaping sterile corporate cafeterias, elderly regulars who'd been coming since the doors first opened. Owner Maria Santos ran the place with the same warmth her father had before her. She knew every regular by name, their usual orders and their family situations. But Grace Mitchell? She was royalty here. Every Tuesday at noon, Grace would arrive with her friend Evelyn from church. Same corner booth, same gentle orders, same conversations that somehow made everyone nearby feel more peaceful. Maria always prepared specially for Grace's visits. Table 4 cleaned twice, best china, fresh flowers, small gestures that showed genuine respect. The respect wasn't calculated. It was earned through decades of Grace's quiet kindness. When did Maria's father have his stroke 5 years ago? Grace organized meal deliveries and hospital visits. When did the diner face closure from a corporate developer? Grace somehow produced a lawyer who handled everything for free. Nobody questioned how Grace made these miracles happen. Her son Anthony must have quite the network through his import-export business. In the corner booth sat a man in an expensive suit, quietly reading the financial section. His coffee sat untouched. He seemed to be watching everyone who came and went. Some professional habits never fade, even when you're technically off duty. The disaster started with something ridiculously simple, a bumped elbow and spilled coffee. Grace had just settled into her favorite booth when David Harper stormed through Sal's front door like he was at war with the universe itself. His Armani suit was wrinkled from the morning's frustrations. He'd gotten a parking ticket. Construction made him 30 minutes late for a meeting, and the coffee shop barista had clearly never learned proper customer service. Harper surveyed Sal's Diner with barely hidden disgust. Cracked vinyl booths, laminated menus. The smell of honest work and grease hangs in the air. This wasn't his usual spot, but his preferred restaurant had been fully booked. He'd have to suffer through lunch with the common people. Maria approached with professional courtesy despite sensing trouble. "Good afternoon, sir. Table for one?" "Obviously," Harper snapped without looking at her. "Somewhere clean if that's possible in this dump. And fast. I have important meetings this afternoon." Maria bit back her response and led him to a table right next to Grace's booth. Harper threw himself into the seat, immediately pulling out his phone to send angry text messages about his terrible morning. Grace sat peacefully with Evelyn, their conversation flowing like a gentle stream. Evelyn was telling her about her grandson's college acceptance when Grace reached for the sugar. Her elbow, moving with the careful precision of someone who learned to be mindful in small spaces, barely grazed Harper's briefcase sitting on the adjacent table. The contact was feather-light. You'd barely notice it, but it was enough to knock over Harper's oversized coffee cup. Brown liquid cascaded across his briefcase, soaking into expensive leather and pooling around scattered business documents. Harper watched in horror as coffee destroyed contracts worth thousands of dollars. "What the hell?" The entire diner went silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Grace immediately reached for napkins. "Oh my goodness, I'm so terribly sorry. Please let me help you clean that." But Harper was beyond reason. All morning's frustrations, his fundamental belief that people like Grace existed solely to inconvenience people like him, everything exploded into pure rage. "You clumsy old woman, look what you've done!" Grace's hand froze, napkins clutched in her weathered fingers. Evelyn gasped. Maria started moving toward the table, but Harper's voice cut through the air like a knife. "These documents are worth more than you'll see in your entire pathetic life. Do you have any idea what you've cost me?" Grace straightened slowly, maintaining her dignity despite the public humiliation. "Sir, it was clearly an accident. I'm happy to pay for any cleaning costs." "Cleaning costs?" Harper's voice rose to a near shriek. "These are irreplaceable business contracts, deals with Fortune 500 companies, cases that determine whether real Americans keep their jobs." The racial undertone was unmistakable. Several customers began pulling out phones, sensing something newsworthy was developing. Grace's voice remained steady as granite. "I understand you're upset, but there's no need for that kind of language." "Don't tell me what kind of language to use." Harper stepped closer, towering over Grace's seated frame. "You people need to learn your place. This is what happens when you let just anyone into decent establishments." Evelyn found her voice. "Young man, you're being completely unreasonable. Accidents happen." Harper whirled on her. "And you can keep your mouth shut too. I don't need lectures from welfare queens about reasonable behavior." That's when phones started emerging from pockets throughout the diner. The slurs were unmistakable now, impossible to misinterpret or excuse. Maria had heard enough. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or leave my establishment." Harper turned his fury on Maria. "Your establishment? This grease trap. You should be thanking me for even walking through your door." Grace stood slowly, deliberately. At 5'3", she still had to look up at Harper's 6'1" frame, but something in her posture commanded absolute attention. "Sir, I have apologized sincerely for an honest mistake. I've offered to make things right, but I will not sit here and allow you to disrespect me, my friend, or this wonderful business owner." Harper's face twisted with rage. The idea that this nobody, this insignificant elderly black woman, would dare stand up to him? Would you dare lecture him about respect? It was beyond his comprehension. "You'll sit down and shut up, or I'll make you regret ever leaving whatever project you crawled out of." Grace's voice cut through his tantrum like steel. "I have every right to be in this restaurant. I've been a customer here for 20 years. I'm a taxpayer, a community member, and a human being who deserves basic courtesy." "Human being?" Harper's laugh was ugly. "You're nothing but a drain on society. You and your whole worthless kind." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Phone cameras captured every syllable. In the corner booth, the man in the expensive suit had stopped pretending to read his newspaper. Grace straightened to her full height, radiating a dignity that made Harper's designer clothes look like a costume. "Young man, you clearly don't know who you're talking to." "I know exactly who you are," Harper snarled. "You're nobody. A nobody from nowhere with nothing who matters to absolutely no one." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Harper's hand moved. He grabbed Grace's wrist, his fingers digging into her thin skin hard enough to leave marks. "You're going to sit down, shut up, and figure out how you're paying for what you destroyed." Grace looked down at his hand gripping her wrist, then back up at his face. "Sir, you need to let go of me. Right now." "I'll let go when you show proper respect to your betters." Evelyn was on her feet. "Let go of her this instant." Maria Santos moved closer, phone in hand. "Sir, if you don't release her immediately, I'm calling the police." But Harper was beyond all reason, beyond any consideration of consequences. When Grace tried to pull her wrist free, when she looked at him with those calm, unafraid eyes that suggested she'd faced down bigger monsters than David Harper, something inside him snapped completely. His free hand came up fast. The slap echoed through Sal's diner like a gunshot. Grace's head snapped to the side. Coffee-stained napkins were scattered across the floor. Her wedding ring, Robert's ring, worn for 51 years, flew from her finger and rolled across the linoleum. It came to rest against a pair of expensive Italian leather shoes in the corner booth. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Customers leaped to their feet, phones held high, recording everything. Maria was already dialing 911. Evelyn rushed to Grace's side, tears streaming down her face, but Grace Mitchell didn't cry. She touched her burning cheek and felt the heat blooming across her dark skin. She looked at David Harper with something that wasn't fear, wasn't anger, wasn't even surprise. It was a pity. "You have absolutely no idea what you just did," she said quietly. Harper straightened his tie, breathing heavy but looking satisfied. Another nobody put in their place. He had no idea that in the corner booth, Anthony Mitchell's most trusted lieutenant was already speed dialing a number that would change everything. The man in the expensive shoes picked up Grace's wedding ring carefully, pocketing it. Evidence, perhaps. Or maybe just something to return to the woman his boss loved more than life itself. By the time police sirens became audible in the distance, David Harper had exactly 24 hours left of believing he was untouchable, and the clock had just started ticking. Officer Marcus Johnson arrived at Sal's diner expecting another routine disturbance call. Instead, he found a dozen phones still recording, and an atmosphere thick with tension you could cut with a knife. Harper immediately seized control. "Officer, thank God you're here. I was attacked by these people while having a peaceful lunch." He flashed his business credentials with practiced ease. "David Harper, senior partner at Blackstone Consulting Group. That woman deliberately destroyed my property and became violent when I requested compensation." Johnson surveyed the scene. Every single witness wore the same expression, pure disgust aimed squarely at Harper. That wasn't typical when someone claimed victimhood. "Sir, please step back and let me assess the situation properly." Harper started name-dropping shamelessly. "Chief Morrison is a personal friend. Commissioner Davis plays golf at my club. I trust this will be handled appropriately." Grace provided her statement with quiet dignity despite her swollen cheek. When asked for emergency contacts, she handed over an elegant business card. "My son Anthony should be notified. Anthony Mitchell. He's a private business consultant." Johnson noted the expensive cardstock, the vague job title. "What kind of consulting, ma'am?" Grace's smile was mysterious. "Problem solving. He helps people with difficult situations." Within 30 minutes, grainy cell phone footage hit social media. Justice for Grace started trending. Users quickly identified Harper, posting his company website and client list. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. He'd spent his career helping corporations cover up discrimination, and now he was the perpetrator caught on camera. Harper's office erupted into crisis mode. Partners held emergency meetings as clients called with concerns, but Harper remained confident. "This will blow over. Some old lady got slapped for being disrespectful. People understand that actions have consequences." Meanwhile, Grace made a quiet phone call. "Anthony, sweetheart, I had a little trouble at lunch today." The voice changed instantly. A busy executive is replaced by something much more dangerous. What kind of trouble, Mama? Are you hurt? A misunderstanding with another customer. He got upset about spilled coffee and, well, he struck me. 3 seconds of deadly silence. He hit you? Just a bruised cheek, baby. Police came. There were witnesses. I thought you should know. What's his name? David Harper. Some kind of business consultant. Another silence. Longer this time. More calculated. Mama, listen very carefully. Don't talk to reporters without me there. Don't sign anything. I'm handling this now. Anthony, you don't need to get involved. Mama. The word carried absolute finality. Someone put their hands on you. This stopped being a small problem the second he made that choice. While Harper slept peacefully that night, certain phone calls were being made across the city. Quiet conversations between people who owed favors, people who remembered debts, people who understood that Anthony Mitchell's family was absolutely off limits. Anthony Mitchell sat in the back room of Lombardi's, the city's most exclusive Italian restaurant. The weekly gathering looked like any high-powered business dinner. Expensive suits, quiet conversations, the kind of meeting where fortunes were made and destroyed over wine and handshakes. Except these weren't Fortune 500 executives. Anthony commanded the head of the table with quiet authority that made hardened criminals sit at attention. To his right sat Frank the Knife Romano, who controlled the waterfront operations. To his left, Isabella Russo, who handled the family's legitimate business fronts. Around the table, lieutenants, advisors, enforcers, all waiting for Anthony's word on territory disputes, profit sharing, and the 100 daily decisions that kept the Mitchell crime family running smoothly. Anthony's phone buzzed during discussions about a construction contract. He glanced at the screen. Mama, excuse me, he said quietly. The room fell silent. When Anthony Mitchell took a call from his mother, everything else stopped. He stepped into the adjoining office, closing the door. Mama, what's wrong? Grace's voice carried through the speaker, measured and calm despite everything. I had a little trouble at lunch. A man became upset about spilled coffee and struck me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. He hit you? His name is David Harper, some kind of consultant. Anthony closed his eyes, processing with the methodical precision that had made him the most feared man in 3 states. Someone had put their hands on Grace Mitchell. Someone was about to learn why that was the most dangerous mistake of their life. Mama, are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? Just a bruised cheek, sweetheart. Evelyn's with me. The police were very professional. Anthony's mind was already working, calculating responses, measuring consequences. The old Anthony, the one who'd grown up on these streets, who'd earned his position through violence, wanted immediate, brutal retribution. But Grace had raised him better than that. Mama, listen carefully. Don't speak to any reporters, don't sign anything, and don't worry about this Harper character. I'll handle everything. Anthony, honey, you don't need to get involved. Mama. The word carried absolute finality. Someone put their hands on you. This isn't a small problem anymore. He ended the call and stood motionless for 30 seconds, staring out at the city below, his city, where his word was law, where his protection meant everything. When he returned to the dining room, 8 pairs of eyes watched him with the attention of soldiers awaiting orders. Change of plans, Anthony announced. Frank, I need everything you can find on a man named David Harper. Full background, finances, family, weaknesses. I want it in 2 hours. Frank nodded, already reaching for his phone. What kind of consultant, boss? The kind who thinks he can slap my mother and walk away. The reaction was immediate. Chairs scraped back, hands moved toward concealed weapons. Isabella's face went pale. Boss, just say the word. Anthony held up a hand. The room froze. We do this right. Mama wants justice, not revenge. We use the system, but we make sure the system works properly. This was why he commanded absolute loyalty, not just his capacity for violence, but his ability to control it. Across town, Harper was enjoying a celebratory dinner at his country club. He'd turned the day's events into a story about standing up to entitled minorities. His audience ate it up. Wealthy, comfortable people convinced the world's problems came from others not knowing their place. Harper had no idea that his name was currently being researched by the most thorough investigators money could buy. Within an hour, Anthony had a complete dossier. Harper's hidden financial troubles, his gambling debts, his pattern of discrimination lawsuits, always settled quietly, always buried. Most importantly, Harper owed $200,000 to Michael Big Mike Torino, who happened to be Anthony's cousin. The irony was almost poetic. Anthony made his first call to District Attorney Jennifer Martinez. They'd grown up 2 blocks apart. She'd attended Grace's community center programs for years. "Jen, it's Anthony. We need to talk." Martinez's voice was immediately cautious. "Anthony, I can't discuss ongoing cases. It's about my mother. David Harper assaulted her today." A pause. Martinez knew exactly who Grace Mitchell was, what she meant to the neighborhood, to Anthony. "Is she okay?" "She's Grace. She's handling it with more dignity than he deserves. I need to know this case gets proper attention." "Anthony, you know I can't promise special treatment." "I'm not asking for special treatment, Jen. I'm asking for justice, the kind my mother taught us both to believe in." Martinez was quiet for a long moment. She owed her law school scholarship to a recommendation letter Grace had written 15 years ago. "Send me the case number. I'll review it personally." One by one, Anthony contacted people who owed Grace debts of gratitude. Police Commissioner Walsh, who remembered when Grace organized neighborhood watches that kept their streets safe. Judge Patricia Santos, who'd gotten her first legal internship through Grace's connections. Federal investigator Marcus Chen, whose family Grace had helped when they first immigrated. This wasn't corruption. This was something deeper. Grace Mitchell had spent 50 years building a community of people who remembered her faith in them. By midnight, Harper's assault case had been flagged for priority review, not because of illegal influence, but because Grace had spent decades earning genuine respect throughout the legitimate power structure. Harper went to sleep confident that his connections would protect him. He had no idea that Grace's connections ran deeper, reached higher, and mattered infinitely more than his country club memberships. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity 3 weeks later. Media crews lined the hallway. Civil rights leaders sat alongside neighborhood residents. The case had become a symbol of something much larger. Harper entered looking diminished. Gone was the expensive suit, replaced by an ill-fitting jacket from a discount store. His original legal team had abandoned him after his company fired him. In the front row sat Grace, her Sunday dress perfect, her posture radiating quiet dignity. And in the back corner, almost invisible, Anthony Mitchell watched with cold patience. For the first time, Harper truly understood who Grace's son was. The expensive suit. The way courthouse security nodded respectfully. The atmosphere of controlled danger surrounded him. This wasn't just some businessman. This was the man who owned half the city. The trial was devastating. Body cam footage showing Harper's lies. Cell phone videos capture every racial slur. Witness after witness describes his escalating harassment. Harper's own social media posts, gloating about putting people in their place. When Grace testified, the courtroom fell silent. "He called me worthless trash," she said quietly. "But I've spent 50 years proving that every human being has worth. I won't let one man's hatred convince me otherwise." Judge Santos delivered the sentence with controlled fury. 18 months in prison, 2 years supervised probation, 500 hours of community service, and a recommendation to review your business license. Harper's legs nearly gave out. As bailiffs approached with handcuffs, Harper's eyes found Anthony one final time. Anthony didn't smile, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge Harper's existence. He simply stood and walked toward his mother. "Thank you for handling this properly, Anthony," Grace said softly. "You taught me well, Mama. Justice matters more than revenge." Grace walked into Sal's diner for her weekly lunch with Evelyn. The same booth waited, the same warm greetings, but everything had changed. The city had honored Grace with a Community Service Award. She'd used her platform to establish the Grace Mitchell Center for Bias Crime Victims, funded by federal grants and staffed by volunteer lawyers, many of them former students she'd helped years ago. "It's not about me," she told reporters. "It's about making sure no one faces this alone." Harper discovered justice from the receiving end. At the East Side Community Center, he reported for court-mandated service every week. His supervisor was a 75-year-old retired teacher who took no nonsense. "You'll serve meals to people who look exactly like the woman you assaulted," she told him. "Learn their names, their stories, their dignity." The work was humbling. Slowly, Harper began understanding what he'd tried to destroy, pillars of community who'd survived decades of prejudice with their humanity intact. Anthony watched these developments with satisfaction. His mother's Grace had accomplished what violence never could: genuine change, systemic reform, justice that prevented future victims. "Mama," he said during Sunday dinner, "you changed more lives through 15 minutes of dignity than I've changed through 15 years of fear." Grace smiled, patting his hand. "Violence wins battles, Anthony, but only love wins wars." At Sal's, Maria had framed the newspaper clipping from Grace's award ceremony. It hung beside photos of neighborhood kids who'd achieved success, families celebrating milestones. A young law student approached Grace's table. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm studying civil rights law. You inspired me to fight hatred with dignity." Grace gestured for her to sit. "Tell me about your family, dear." As the student shared her story, immigrant parents, financial struggles, dreams of protecting others, Grace saw herself reflected in another young person determined to make the world more just. This was the real victory. Not Harper's imprisonment, but the inspiration Grace's courage provided to the next generation who refused to accept injustice as inevitable. The case had created lasting change, systems reformed, precedents established, hope renewed. Grace continued doing what she'd always done, believing in people's capacity for growth, fighting injustice with grace, proving that the most revolutionary act is refusing to let hatred make you hateful. So here's my question for you. Have you ever stood up for someone who couldn't defend themselves? Have you ever discovered that quiet people hold unexpected power? David Harper thought he could slap an elderly woman and face no consequences. He thought his position made him untouchable. He learned the hard way that some people command protection through love rather than fear. Grace Mitchell spent 50 years lifting others, while Harper spent his career tearing people down. In the end, Grace's quiet dignity defeated Harper's loud arrogance. Her son Anthony proved that true power is not about violence. It's about knowing when and how to use every tool at your disposal to protect the people you love. The most dangerous person isn't always the one making the most noise. Sometimes it's the quiet, elderly woman in the corner booth whose son runs the city. Sometimes it's the mother who taught her son that justice matters more than revenge. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Drop a comment about a time you witnessed dignity defeat hatred. And subscribe for more stories where ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things by choosing hope over hate. We don't clean up the truth. We tell it exactly as it happened, because reality deserves nothing less than the unfiltered, uncut truth. Every week we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced, stories that matter, justice that inspires. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep standing up for what's right. Because you never know whose life might change forever, because you chose kindness over cruelty, dignity over rage, love over hate.